Hello, everyone. Tonight we will relax with the story. A rolling countryside covered in cold mist, horses neighing in the distance, and a gray stone castle standing alone in the middle of the field, as if it were waiting for you to return. You can smell the damp moss mixed with smoke. Feel your hands touch the cold wrought iron handrails. It's not a five-star hotel. It's a giant time machine. And you, yes, you, have just become its owner. You didn't learn how to be a landowner in school. No one taught you how to avoid being assassinated in your sleep. But welcome to the 14th century, a world where if you don't own land, you're barely human. And if you do own land, you barely have time to sleep. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the videos and subscribe, but only if you actually like what I do here. And if you're listening to this from somewhere on Earth, please leave your location and local time. Now turn off the lights, turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's start our night journey together. You arrive at dusk. Faint light filters through the narrow windows, and as the heavy iron gate slams shut behind you, a part of you is locked in another page of history. The servants bow their heads, holding lanterns, their eyes filled with curiosity. Not everyone is looking forward to the new landlord. You trudge down the cobblestone hallway, each step echoing off the high ceiling as if the past were whispering to you. Actually, maybe it's more than just the past, because in the middle of the night, you hear it. A soft, uneven footfall, as if someone or something were probing around the bedroom. You let out a soft breath, your hand tightening on the hilt of the dagger hidden under your pillow. It was not that you had not heard of the old ghosts who lived in the castle walls, but you had not expected to hear them on your first night. One strange detail: there's a glass of water on the table. You are sure you did not leave it there. And next to the glass is a long silver hair. Not yours. Not the hair of anyone you met in the castle today. You do not sleep for the rest of the night. The next morning, the old butler comes to clean the room. You ask about the footsteps. He frowns, and is silent for so long that you think you have broken a taboo. Then he mumbles. It's always like that on the first night. The last master heard it too. That's when you discover something. For 70 years, not a single landlord stayed for more than 3 years. They either left or disappeared. Did you know that there's a historical event happening right around this time? In 1352, just a few miles from where you stand, a sensational land ownership trial took place. A nobleman was accused of using witchcraft to manipulate the harvests of neighboring landowners. He was hanged, with no evidence other than that recent seasons had been too good. And the strange thing? They had also been staying in the very castle you're entering. Historians still debate whether the disappearances here are the result of political intrigue or simply a curse. Some say the castle's basement once housed heretics. Others say it was simply a wine cellar, a drink so strong it could make you forget who you were. Either way, you don't want to be down there in the middle of the night. You begin to get to know each room, the dusty library, the dining room with its long table, so that if you sit at one end and call the servant at the other, the mail will arrive first. Each object whispers of a life before you. The chair still has a slight knife cut, perhaps from a quarrel. A candlestick is bent, by the wind or by human hands. In the afternoon, you climb to the tower. The wind is strong, and from there you can see the whole territory. The thatched roofs of the tenant farmers, the fields spread out like hand-painted carpets, the black forest in the distance like a curtain blocking the way out. You are more than just the landlord. You are the law. You are the taxes. You are the hopes and fears. And you are not sure you want to be that person for long. At the top of the tower, you find an old chair facing the sunset. There's a small silver plate attached to the arm of the chair, engraved with the name of a man you have never heard of, Alaric, in 1329. But strangely enough, that name is not on the castle's genealogy. Another mystery. because the steward said clearly, that year, the castle had no landlord. You still haven't figured out who walked through the hallway last night. But tonight, you leave the silver hair on the table, next to a piece of paper with a single line. I saw you. And as night falls, it rains. The sound of water droplets tapping on the window panes is like the heartbeat of the castle itself. You lie still in the dark, your hand still under your pillow, waiting. The next morning begins with a rooster crowing from inside the house. Someone or something has dragged a chicken into the hallway, and it stands right outside your door like a winged messenger, preening nonchalantly on the faded Persian rug. No one will admit it. You walk down the stone stairs, a little lightheaded from lack of sleep, and notice the smell of food, not the comforting smell of toast or stew. This smells like someone mixed mustard with a foot rag and put it on the stove. The castle kitchen is deep in the basement, where light is almost a concept. You walk into it as if you're entering a salt mine. Inside, a stone-faced old cook stirs something that makes you wonder. If you sniff it for another 5 minutes, will you grow an ear? This is black radish soup, sir, she said, without you asking. My family's secret recipe since the 12th century. You think back to when you were in high school, when someone accidentally left a sandwich in the fridge for 3 weeks. This smells like, but more legitimate. You take a spoonful. It smells like bad decisions. The staff seemed to be living a silent comedy. The maid, Brita, always wore her socks the wrong way around. The youngest servant, Tom, had a habit of crawling into the fireplace to sleep. And the oldest servant, a man named Godfrey, swore that he had been a servant to 3 different masters, all of whom disappeared after tasting the moss pudding. You live in a world where breakfast can be a test of willpower, and managing people is a balancing act between fear and enough jam. An interesting historical fact from the same period you're sliding into. Around 1348, in England, the first kitchen sanitation laws were enacted in several cities after people died from eating flour mixed with brick kiln ash. That makes you think about the 3-day porridge you hear about on the dinner menu. Strangely enough, even though the food could kill, the servants were fiercely loyal. They bowed, obeyed, and asked no questions. But their eyes, well, they didn't lie. Noticed that sometimes they looked at you as if you were a replacement, a temporary placeholder. You try to make a connection. You invite them to dinner. They decline, clearly horrified. You ask them about their families. Most have none, or disappeared in the snow. And finally, you do what no landlord has done in decades. You enter the servants' bedrooms. Small room, straw bed, windows the size of a hand. In one corner you find something strange, a rough, hand-drawn map, marked with a red deep in the northern woods. Under the map, scrawled in ink, are the words, "If he disappears, look here." You ask Brita. She shakes her head, but her eyes tremble, and she blurts out, "My old teacher used to live there." Teacher. He taught me to embroider holy words and avoid full moon nights. Maybe it's just bullshit, or maybe it's not. One thing you notice, the servants never call you by your name. They call you sir, or new master. No one uses your real name. When you try to introduce yourself, Godfrey just smiles sadly and says, "Names come and go, sir. Castles stay." Historians still debate the exact role of servants on 14th century estates. Some say they were an oppressed but loyal class, while others question, could servants have been the real controllers of the castle? A hidden system where the master was merely a figurehead, and the floor cleaner knew all the secrets. You start to feel watched, not just by the eyes in the hallway, but by the wall itself. The bricks here seem to have a memory. Touching the wall in the study, you feel a depression, just the right size for your fingertip. Press. Click. A small compartment opened. Inside was a piece of paper so old you thought it would dissolve if you sneezed. The writing was faded. Food is the key. That evening, you look at the food on the table with new respect. Godfrey serves the main course, salted apple pie and bird liver sausage. But all you notice is the silver goblet beside you. Something is wrong. You pick up your glass, pretend to drink, then put it back. Few minutes later, Tom comes to clear the table, and you see him swap your glass for another. In a flash, his eyes still glued to the floor. You said nothing, but you knew. And now you know they know you know. That night, before going to sleep, you lock the door with 2 iron bolts, place a chair to block the entrance, and hide a small knife in the sleeve of your nightgown. Outside, the dark hallway still echoed with footsteps, this time accompanied by a soft whistle, a repetitive melody, as if someone was sending you a message. You don't sleep, but you dream of a long dining table, and you sit at the end, surrounded by servants, but their faces are covered by burlap masks. In your dream, you can't get up, because your hands are tied to the armrests of your chair by strands of silver hair. In the morning, you wake up with the vague feeling that you've run a marathon in your sleep. Not physically, but mentally. You feel like you've been discussion with the castle itself all night, and you lost. The door was still locked. The chair blocking the door was still there, but the strand of silver hair you had left on the table was gone. In its place was a new object to coin, small, worn, with a snarling lion on one side. You don't recognize the coin, and you certainly don't leave it there. Down in the hall, breakfast is served, without chicken this time. Godfrey is trimming his beard with a knife that looks like it was sharpened from an old sword. You pull out a coin and place it on the table. Who left this in my room? The whole table was silent. Then Brita whispered, without looking at her friend, Grumley silver. The castle belonged to them 300 years ago. You blink. 300 years. Perhaps it finds you worthy, Godfrey said, his voice as if telling a story to a cat. Corresponding historical event. Around the beginning of the 12th century, the Grumley family, a prominent aristocratic branch in the north of England, became extinct after a land lawsuit that dragged on so long that the bishop who attended the trial died midway through. It may sound like an exaggeration, but the York Abbey records include a line. The last of the Grumleys gave himself up, not by the sword, but by treason. You start to think that maybe the castle is choosing a successor, not legally, but more of a physical choice. Maybe you're being tested. At noon, you decide to explore the northern woods, where the scrawled map in the servants' room once pointed. No clear reason, just intuition. And like any rash decision in the Middle Ages, you go alone. The forest was colder than you expected. The wind blew through the leaves, and a strange sound echoed through the trees, as if someone was laughing through the birds' throats. Every step you took on the dry leaves seemed to be recorded on a loudspeaker. Coming to a vacant lot, you find it. A stone statue half buried in the ground, its head broken off, its body carved with a faded coat of arms. At its base is a carelessly carved Latin inscription, the resting place of the traitor. You're not sure who the traitor is, but you're sure this place was once a place that had a very good reason to be forgotten. You return, dust covering the hem of your shirt, only to discover someone has been in your room while you were gone. The pillow is turned upside down, and the candle you left on the shelf has been lit and blown out. The smoke is fresh. You look out the window. No one is there, but outside, just under the eaves, something is shining. You step out and see a silver hairpin engraved with the letter B. Brita, or someone else? Then a strange truth dawned on her. For 3 days, you had not seen Brita pass through the front door. Not outside, not shopping, not picking up any deliveries. She had just been there, as if she had no need to go anywhere, as if she belonged in the castle, as plaster belonged to the walls. Historians have proposed a strange theory. Some medieval servants were more than just forced or hired labor. They may have been blood keepers, people so tied to a place that their personal identity was swallowed up. They were not recorded in family trees, but they could not leave. If they left, they died. You try asking Brita indirectly, "Where are you from?" She smiled slightly. "Here, sir." "I mean, what village were you born in?" "Right here," she repeated, still wiping the silver cup. "Who are your parents?" She paused, then whispered. The previous owner asked that question. He also received the silver coin. You shiver. That evening, the wind picks up. The wooden doors groan as if they are about to break off their hinges. And while you are reading an old notebook in the library, you find a strange handwritten entry. If you read this, you will see it too. Don't eat black soup on Wednesdays. You check the calendar. Today is Tuesday. You close the book, very gently, very slowly, and decided to fast tomorrow. You wake before dawn, not to the sound of chickens, this time to a dream. A voice whispers in your ear over and over again all night. A sound as dry as rotting leaves. Don't eat. Don't drink. Don't sign. You open your eyes and see a shadow, standing at the foot of the bed, motionless, tall, and draped in a sheet like a canopy. You jump up, heart pounding, only to discover it's a new robe. Someone has quietly hung it over the bed frame. There was a strange symbol embroidered on the sleeve, like two intertwined GS. Could it be Grumley? Or a new symbol you hadn't seen before? You walk down to the kitchen with triple the alertness. The black soup is on the table. Wednesday, just as warned. Tom is standing near the stove, whistling the tune you heard last night, breaking off at a certain note. You look at the soup. It is thick as mud, and the steam is the color of no color. A pale gray smoke, as if it is coming from the memory of someone who has just been forgotten. You do not touch it, and Brita sees it. She smiled, a toothless smile. History of this period records a few rare instances of ceremonial meals among northern aristocratic families. These meals, which were supposed to re-establish the master-servant order, took place on the first Wednesday of each month. The strange thing, no one ever lived to tell us what the soup tasted like. You decide to fake a stomachache, skip dinner, and retreat to your room. But your mind is restless. You need answers, and there's only one place you haven't checked thoroughly, the wine cellar. Goffrey once forbade you to go down there, citing dampness that ruined your knees. Not convincing. You make your way down to the wooden door behind the kitchen. The wooden stairs are rickety, as if they were eaten by termites a century ago. At the foot of the stairs, the dim light from an oil lamp illuminates shelves of dusty bottles. But it's not the wine that stops you. It's the stone door in the corner. The door was unlocked, and behind it was a small room. Stone walls, no windows. On the walls hung dozens of oil portraits, all of them nobles in black robes, with abnormally large eyes and a blank stare. You hold the light closer and see a sign with your name on it, with exact date of birth, no date of death, just a space reserved. You step back, bumping into a liquor cabinet. A bottle falls unbroken, but you notice it has no label. You open the lid. Inside is a black liquid, thick as tar. It smells like soup. You put the bottle in your coat pocket, turn off the lights, and leave the cellar. That afternoon, you sit in the garden, under the apple tree, which you think is the only place where someone hasn't whispered a memory. But you're wrong. You see the apple peels lying in a spiral right under the tree. It's not an accident. Someone is leaving a mark, and you begin to understand. This is not just a witchcraft. This is a process, a ritual, a selection. The heir to this castle is chosen not by blood, but by the ability to survive the trials, a game that has lasted for centuries. And you are the newest player. Fun fact, there is an English folk legend about the replacement landlord, a person called upon by a castle when its life cycle is about to restart, not to manage it, but to be a part of it. A brick, an echo, an eye in a painting. You return to your room and notice a new object on the table, a small wooden box, locked with a simple mechanism. You open it. Inside is a contract, written in Latin, sealed with a cracked red wax seal. The first line reads, "Give yourself and your identity, and you will receive eternity." No place to sign, just a place to bleed. You close the lid of the box. Your hands are shaking. That night, you don't sleep. You lie in bed, eyes open, watching the ceiling, where the stonework is shaped like an eye. Not that it hasn't been there before, but it's never looked back at you before. The wind in the hallway sounded again, but this time, it was accompanied by footsteps. Heavy, rhythmic, closer, closer, until it stopped right in front of your room door. No one knocked, just standing there. You don't breathe. You don't blink. After what seems like an hour, the footsteps turn away. But you hear a distinct whisper, not the wind. Tomorrow night. Decide. You spend the next day feeling like you're waiting for a final exam, but with the bonus of not being digested by an ancient spirit. You try to act normal. Eat breakfast, nod at Gaffrey. Pretend to listen to Tom tell you about a snake that once slithered into the latrine, long as the oak table and smelling sin. But all you hear in your head is two words: tomorrow night. Historical fact. In the Middle Ages, the concept of the moment of destiny was more than just a metaphor. Rituals, especially those of religion or power, were often fixed on the night before the new moon, a time when the boundaries between the realms were said to be thinnest. Coincidentally, tonight was one of those nights. You think of all sorts of things, escape, but where to go in this remote land, with no map, a horse that is one-eyed, and the only person who knows the way, Gaffrey, who seems to have died and come back to life several times. Talk to Brita? No, she's starting to act like she's no longer a servant. Today you see her walk past a mirror, and there's no reflection, not a single ray. What about Tom? You try to start a conversation. Tom, if we want to leave here, can you show us the way? Tom frowned. Where to, sir? All roads lead here. You ask no more. One afternoon, as you wander through the attic archives, a place filled with scorched notebooks and untitled maps, you stumble upon an old, leather-bound diary with no title. The handwriting inside is thin and regular, but the dates are not from the history you've studied. For example, the 11th day after the cracked bell, or the first night of the broken moon after the black rain. The content, however, was clear. Someone who had lived here too. Someone who had received the silver coin too. Someone who had been given the brooch and the soup. But he had signed. And then, at the end, there was only a few scribbles. There's no more me. Only the room remains. I am gone, but this place still speaks with my voice. Modern historians still debate whether records like these, often dismissed as folklore, have any historical merit. But you don't need to debate. You know damn well these things happen. Dark fell. There were no stars. Even the air was thick, as if the sky had been sucked clean and replaced with a layer of murky wax. You sit in the room, the candles lit, burning with a bluish glow. And then, as expected, there is a knock on the door. Not hard. 3 taps. Soft, as if the person tapping was using a small bone instead of a finger. You don't answer, but the door opens. Not by hand. It opens in the manner of a question that already has an answer. Brita entered. She was not wearing her usual scarf. Her hair was long and silver. She held a wooden box with the contract in it. Without saying a word, she placed it on the table, then pointed to the small knife beside it. Just one drop, and you will never feel hungry, cold, or lonely again. You look at her, and I will still be myself. She smiled. Yes, within new limits. You look at the box. Then you look at your hand. Then you ask, has anyone ever said no? Brita paused, as slight as a crack in a mirror. Yes, one person. And what about him? She replied, tonight, if you go into the woods and hear your name called, do not answer. It is him. Here's a curious fact. In Old English folklore, there was a legend of the lost voice. People who were once alive, but not quite dead. They were swallowed into the earth, turned into whispers in the wind, and were called by only one name each year. If you answered, you switched places with them. You look Brita in the eyes. No longer submissive, just part of the building, guiding the new guide through the next trial. You don't answer, and Brita dissolves into the darkness as if she had never been there. Midnight, you leave the room, taking nothing but your old cloak and the oil lamp. You go down into the yard, towards the woods, and just as you cross the stone threshold, you hear a call. Male voice, warm, almost like you. Come back, please. I miss the feeling of having a body. You clench your fist. No answer, and the whisper gradually disappeared, like a mist dissolving in the early morning. You don't turn back. You move on, into the woods. Eyes closed, light-hearted. The night forest is not what you expect, not cold, not completely dark. Instead, scattered lights like fireflies trapped in cocoons, suspended between the leaves, create a hazy atmosphere, as if you are walking through your own memories. You don't know where to go. You just know you have to go. Your feet tread on the rotting leaves without making a sound, as if the forest is holding the sound, digesting it bit by bit. And then you meet him. A man sat on a mossy stone slab, wearing a monk's robe, but his face was covered by a wooden mask, only 2 eye holes and a slit for a mouth. He was weaving a basket, out of hair. You turned to leave, but he spoke. You don't sign. His voice came not from your mouth, but from behind your head. You reply slowly, because I don't want to be a part of that. The man was silent for a moment. Then he handed you a string, also made of hair. Then wear this. It will remind you that everything has a price. You don't want to receive, but your hand reaches out. A major historical event occurred in the late 12th century. The development of spiritual property law, contracts engaging with supernatural forces in exchange for earthly power, which were especially popular among the nobility with isolated fiefdoms. Many scholars of the time believed that this helped explain the mysterious disappearance of some families. They did not die out, but transformed. You put on the string. It tightens around your neck, not uncomfortably, but you see a memory that is not yours, standing in the yard, crying, hands covered in mud, not remembering who you are. Is there another way? You ask. The man did not reply. He stood up and slowly disappeared into the shadows of the trees, leaving behind only a basket full of fallen hair. You keep walking, and then you come to a clearing. In the middle is a circle of stones, 7 standing stones, each with a symbol engraved on it. And right in the center, a mirror. Not your ordinary mirror. It reflects the space around it, but not you. You step closer, stare, and then you see yourself, but not as you are now. The person in the mirror was dressed in ancient clothing. His eyes had no whites, and his mouth was in an almost pleading smile. The figure reached out and touched the surface of the mirror. Not an invitation, but a warning. You step back, heart pounding, and then you hear footsteps. Not one, many, from all directions. You turn, and there they are, 7 figures in black cloaks, their faces covered, each walking toward a rock. They sang together, like a melancholy chorus. The blood has not yet dripped. The form has not yet entered. The soul has not yet settled. You step back, but the mirror has no escape now. Its surface is water, ripples, and the hand reaches up. You don't wait. You run, and you run aimlessly, until you stumble, and wake up. You are lying in bed, in a castle. It is morning. Tom knocked on the door, bringing bread and goat's milk. "Good morning, sir. Today is the village fair. Would you like to come along?" You look at him, not knowing what to say. Brita was also standing there, wearing a light jacket. She smiled, her eyes normal, as if last night had never happened. You don't know where you are, or when, but you nod. Maybe you've passed around, or you just entered a new cycle. Fun fact, medieval English castles often built separate market areas for blood moons, not for trading, but to mark the changing of the guard. These markets were not on civic maps, but still appear in folklore as the market that opens for a day and then disappears. You go down the stairs. Tom walks ahead, whistling. Brita follows, carrying a basket of apples. You stop in front of the large mirror in the hall. This time you see yourself. But there's one strange thing. In the mirror, on your neck, the hair string is still there. You step out of the castle as if waking from a centuries-long sleep. The bright sunlight doesn't make you squint, but makes your skin tickle as if someone is gently peeling back layers of fragile memories from your bones. The village road opens up before you. Rough cobblestones, tents lined up on both sides, the smell of cakes, mead, and wet straw. A little pig tied on a red string leads its elderly owner instead of the other way around. You recognize a few of the villagers' faces, but they look at you with the eyes of people who have buried you but aren't sure if you're really dead. You walk alongside Tom and Brita. They laugh and talk as if it's just another day. But you can't forget last night. Can't forget the string of hair still tied around your neck. A reminder that you're no longer completely in the familiar world. At one booth, an old woman invites you to play the Wheel of Fate. The wheel is old, but painted bright red. So bright, you think, that it looks like it's made of beet juice or something else. You turn the wheel. It slowly turns and stops at the image of a black owl. The old woman was not surprised. You have been given the gift of hearing what no one else dares to say, but only once. You smile, but as you turn away, you suddenly hear 2 women whispering from behind. "See, he's the replacement. 7 times already. Each time, the castle gets a little younger." As for Brita, do you think she is still? No. She had her humanity sucked out of her long ago, but she still plays the part well. You turn back. They are silent, looking at you, smiling politely. A real historical event occurred in 1311 in England. During the Festival of Lammas, some landowners organized a game called the Wheel of Trials, in which participants were subjected to a random challenge, and the winner was given a temporary title like Earl of the Night. But no one held that title for more than a moon. No one lived long enough to tell why. You continue on, passing by a large tent. Inside is a blind fortune teller. He doesn't need you to speak. He just says, "Welcome back, Mark Neck." You step back, but he reaches out, not touching you, but the space in front of you. Then he says, "You have one question, but only one answer." You swallow. After a while you ask, "Am I still me?" The fortune teller smiled, an unhappy smile. You remember, but you are no longer. Like a fireplace that still burns even though the flames have long since gone out. You thank him, even though you don't know why. Brita meets you at the exit. She hands you a cup of warm honey. How was the fair? You looked at her, your eyes sharper than before. Who are you? She didn't blink. The keeper, like you will be. Here's a curious fact. In Norse mythology, there are door gods. Those who don't fight, don't rule, just guard the passage between worlds. They're also the most powerful beings, because they decide who's allowed to pass through. You look around. The whole fairgrounds freeze for a moment. Everyone stops, motionless. The wind stops. Is this real? You ask. Brita chuckled. It's not about whether it's true or not. It's already been decided. Then she turned and walked straight into the crowd, which began to move again as if nothing had happened. You stand there, holding the cup of honey, now cold. The wind returns, blowing your cloak. In the distance, the castle bells ring, but in reverse, the series of sounds going from high to low, calling you back to the past. Modern historians still debate the phenomenon of shadow towns, communities that once existed on maps but are now untraceable, despite numerous handwritten documents. One theory is that they were time-sealed communities that opened their doors only on festival days and then disappeared. You're not sure what time you're living in, but you're no longer outside the story. You're in it, so deep it's hard to turn back. You walk back to the castle with a strange feeling, like you've been put back in your place, rather than actually walking down the street. Everything about you is still in place. Your hair hasn't turned gray. Your shirt hasn't gotten dirty. But inside, it's like something's been reprogrammed. The evening castle no longer felt like an empty fortress. It breathed. It had a heartbeat, and you could hear it, a faint beat in the stone walls, as if someone were tapping the grain of the stone with a long finger. Tom said you have guests. You don't expect anyone, but then you see them, a delegation from a nearby town, carrying royal letters and an ironclad chest. My lord, one of them began, you have been asked to judge a land dispute between the villages of Balforth and Greyshaw. They are vying for control of a piece of land that grew after a meteor shower. You want to laugh, but no one is kidding. You take the document, seal it with your own wax seal, a seal you don't remember owning. You are taken to the old courtroom. The wood is creaky. The ceiling is high. The Lord's chair is so high that it seems as if sitting down would make you no longer yourself. 2 village representatives presented. The disputed land had not been on any map before, but recently it had appeared on its own. Trees grew in spirals. Spring water flowed underground. No animals dared to approach. You ask, so what do both sides want? One side replied, we want to build a shrine there. The other side said, we want to fence it off, banning all strangers. You rest your chin on your hand and sigh. Did anyone ever live there? One replied, no, but we heard singing at night. A girl's voice. She called out the name of a man who did not belong to any village. A true historical event. In 1255, in the Somerset region, there was a similar dispute over newly grown land. A hill suddenly appeared after an earthquake, not on any map. The local lord ordered a chapel to be built there. But 3 weeks later, both the chapel and the priest disappeared. The only note recorded was, and they should not do so. You feel like this land doesn't need people. It's already full. You declare, no village will be allowed to approach that land. It will belong to this castle and remain sealed forever. Both sides protested, but you did not budge. Then you used your seal and engraved a ban on a bronze tablet. As you place your hand on the board to stamp, a cold current passes through your palm. You see a flash of an image, a man in armor standing in the middle of a spiraling field, holding the hand of a woman whose face has been erased. Then you come back to reality. Everyone left the courtroom. Tom stayed behind, silently looking at his friend as if he wanted to ask something. You ask, has anyone ever made a decision like that? He replied, "You are the third person." "What about the two people in front?" He hesitated. "The first one disappeared in the night. The second one locked himself in a cellar and didn't speak to anyone for 6 years." A curious fact: in some English castles, people found small rooms built into the walls, with only a peephole and a place to put food. The person who lived inside never left for the rest of his life, called an anchoress or anchorite. A person who voluntarily anchored himself so as not to be swept away by the flow of time. Night falls. You return to your room. The wind whistles through the window as if it is sending a warning in a language only the wind understands. You look in the mirror. Nothing unusual. But when you turn away, you see your reflection in the mirror, still standing there, looking at you. Do nothing. Just stand still and smile. You turn around. There is no one. The mirror reflects only an empty room. You sit down on the bed. Everything is quiet. But you know, the next time you have to make a decision, you won't just be the one choosing. You will be the chosen part. The sky no longer knows whether it is day or night. You look out the window and see the hazy moon hanging like a broken plate by a thread. Mist covers the valley below, and strange calls echo from the deep forest as if there is no beginning and no end. You can't remember the last time you really slept. Your eyes don't droop, but your mind drifts slowly, drifting into something you call an in-between state. There, everything is hazy, yet strangely sharp. In the morning, Brita came to find her friend. She was wearing a black cloak, no jewelry, no smile. She said only one sentence. "It's time you learn to walk between two doors." You follow her to a vault you've never known existed. It's deep beneath the library, behind a bookshelf that holds copies of your diary. The scariest thing is not that you wrote those words. It's that you wrote them yesterday. The words are fresh. The ink is not yet dry. A stone door slid aside, revealing a spiral staircase. You followed Brita down. The air was cold, as if no living creature had ever breathed it. Below is an octagonal room. There are mirrors on each wall, but they don't reflect you. They reflect different versions of you. An older version, a screaming version, a version in rusty armor, and a version with no eyes. Brita stood in the middle of the room. She said, "Every landlord must undergo this ritual, not to understand the past, but to know what is occupying his body." An official historical fact: in 1327, in Durham, a landowner named Elderic disappeared after a mirror ceremony. Records say he was last seen entering an ancient mirror vault, with mirrors aligned with compasses. The area was later sealed off and called the closed prism. You are asked to choose a mirror and step into it. You hesitate, but then feel pulled toward the mirror that shows you smiling slightly, eyes sunken. As you step through, you find yourself in a corridor. Not real, not unreal. There, images float. Your first night in the castle. Tom's look when he sees you alive. The blind fortune tellers whisper, and an image of Brita, but a young Brita, tied to a tree, her eyes pleading for help. You touch the image. It dissolves into smoke, and you hear a whisper. "We were real people once, and then we were told too many times." You open your eyes and find yourself back in the mirror room, but you are standing in the middle, and Brita is sitting on the stone throne. "You have become the mirror keeper," she said. "You do not just live here now. You are this place." You chuckled. "I don't remember agreeing." She shrugged. "No one remembers, but everyone has done it." A strange fact: in Welsh folklore, there is a legend about the ninth room, a place where the forgotten self of each person is contained. Whoever finds it will no longer be themselves, but will no longer fear themselves. You leave the cellar. The castle seems quieter, but not because it is silent, because it is listening. You sit down at your desk. On it is an empty notebook, and a pen with ink ready. No one tells you what to write, but your hand starts moving. The first line appears. Welcome to day one of remembering. Remember the fair? The woman said you were the seventh replacement. Now you know better. Not replaced. You are the one reused. The core is still you, but the outer layers have been reprogrammed to fit the story. Historians still debate the concept of recurring identities. Some believe that medieval lords were so bound to social patterns that they could not escape their roles, and that history turned them into circles. Others believe that castles themselves, with their fixed spaces and unchanging rituals, warped the people inside into replicas of their predecessors. You look out the window again. This time the wind is still. The moon is still. But inside you, there is a strange feeling. Not fear, but adaptation. You begin to understand. You are not stuck here. You have become an indispensable part of this place. And that might not be so bad. One morning, you wake up without the bell or the crow of a rooster. Only a faint silver light, filtering through the thick curtains, is enough to open your eyes. But when you look around, you see that the room is not as usual. The objects were still there. The large wooden bed, the robes on the hooks, the burned-out candle, but something didn't match. You step into the hallway barefoot. The stone walls are cold underfoot, like early spring ice. The scent of burning wood lingers, mixed with the scent of lilacs, the scent of a season that should not be here. Brita stood waiting for you at the foot of the stairs. No cloak, no ceremony. She wore only a coarse gray dress, her hair tied back like the village girls you had seen as a child. You are ready, she said. You don't ask for anything. There are times in life when asking is redundant. She led you through the gardens behind the castle. There, the rosebush was in bloom, even though it was late winter. A stone path that you swore hadn't been there yesterday led to an old wooden gate carved with 3 interlocking circles. You put your hand on the gate. It opens gently like opening an old book. Inside was an empty room, completely empty, except for a small mirror placed in the middle of the floor. Brita beckoned. You walked over and looked in the mirror. No reflection. Not because you disappeared, but because the mirror no longer needed to reflect. A true historical event. At the castle of Montségur in France in 1244, there is a record of a rite of silence performed in the empty room. Those who passed were called les porteurs du vide, the bearers of the void. No one ever described what they saw inside. You sit down in front of the mirror. From within the mirror, a voice calls out, your own voice, but from somewhere else. So finally, I hear myself. You smile, not because you understand, but because you no longer need to understand. The mirror cracks a little, then mends itself. But instead of glass, you now see an image of the entire castle from above, as if you were looking down at your own place. Every stone, every wall, every servant, and then you see yourself, sitting in front of the mirror, looking up. A strange moment happens. You touch the glass lightly, and you enter the image itself. There is no longer outside and inside. You stand up. Brita bows her head. Congratulations, landlord. From now on, this place will live through you. A strange fact, there is a legend of a living castle on the border between Scotland and England, where each generation has a single person who completes the loop. After that, the castle will sleep for 100 years, and that person melts into the stone walls. Although no one has found the body, on thunderous nights, people say they can still hear steady breathing coming from inside the walls. You return to the study. Everything is as usual, but not as usual. Tom brings you tea, not looking at you for too long. Brita doesn't come too close. The servants speak in lower tones. It's as if you've become something that shouldn't be touched. You open the notebook you wrote in. The line from yesterday is still there. But there is a new paragraph. You don't remember writing it, but you don't deny it either. If you read this, you have become the narrator. And like every narrator before you, you will never have to repeat it, but it will repeat itself. To the next person. Historians still debate whether medieval social roles were truly immutable. Some argue that people were not imposed on them, but that they forced themselves into repetitive roles to maintain order. An extreme hypothesis suggests that perhaps social consciousness was something inherited, not just land. You sit down on the chair. Look out the window. The moon still hangs there, not falling, not full, just quietly illuminating everything like the light in a hotel hallway at night. You no longer fear repetition, because you are repetition, and you are the one telling it, in a quiet, monotone voice. The door is closed. The journey is over, but the castle is still here. And who knows, one day, someone will walk in again with the same old question. Is anyone there? At that time, if you answer, remember to speak softly, so that the person will be lulled to sleep like you were. The story has come to an end here. Close your eyes and relax with the darkness. Good night, everyone.